Welcome back to Pressers by FedNet, where news conferences from the United States Congress become podcast episodes for your listening on your time. Senate Majority Leader John Thune and Republican Whip John Barrasso spoke with reporters outside the chamber on July 21st. Thune highlighted the busy legislative activity ahead before taking questions about a budget resolution pending in the House, the Iran war's trajectory, and more. The following material is protected by copyright.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's a busy week here in the United States Senate, and I would say that there is no shortage of opportunities for bipartisan legislating in the weeks ahead. There are a number of things that we can do, one of which would be a market structure bill. That's something that's a candidate for consideration. The Lindsey Graham sanctioning Russia legislation is also something that's being worked on and is something I hope we can get the necessary support to get to the floor. And then obviously a defense authorization bill, which was voted down on the motion to proceed last week by the Democrats, is something that also normally is a bipartisan piece of legislation. But none of those things get done if the Democrats continue their posture of trying to block even getting on legislation. And again, I use the defense authorization bill as an example of something that we've done for 65 years in a row, which last week the Democrats decided, even though not many of them, but a number of them had voted for the legislation when it came out of the Armed Services Committee, decided to block its consideration on the floor. So that's something that ought to be able to get done. And then obviously the most important thing that we need to do is to fund the government. And on that front, Chair Susan Collins is working with Democrats on the Appropriations Committee to find a path forward to have a continuing resolution to keep the government funded, to get past the November elections so that we don't have the specter of a government shutdown, something that happened a couple of times this last year. And the disruption, the chaos that creates is just something that both sides ought to be willing to try and avoid. And so I think it's going to be really important that we figure out a path forward to get a bipartisan agreement to fund the government that will keep government open and ensure that government employees are getting paid. And that is something that I intend to bring to the floor for a vote before the August break. Senator Barrasso.
Well, today's Democrat Party is being driven by extremists. It's the extremists who are winning primary elections. Democrats seem to be determined to destroy America. We have a socialist mayor in New York, and one will soon be in the District of Columbia as well. When you take a look at the people that have been winning Democrat primaries this year, there are people who want to defund the police, raise taxes, and open the borders. There are people that want free health care for illegal immigrants paid for by American taxpayers. And they would rather defend and protect illegal immigrant criminals than law-abiding American citizens. We know, according to their manifesto, they want to pack the Supreme Court. They want to put judges in place who will deny the law, defy the Constitution. Their manifesto says that they want to eliminate the Electoral College. They want to eliminate the Senate so that people in the Senate leadership on the Republican side, the people we represent, their voices would be silent. It's so disturbing that one of the nominees for Congress, Democrat nominee, has boasted and posted the fact that when her hands were dirty, she wiped them on the American flag. That's the agenda of these people. They are reckless. They are terrible in terms of what they would do to America. They're extreme. They're dangerous. They're scary. The American people don't want that. The American people demand and deserve better. And Republicans are going to continue to fight for freedom, for liberty, and for continued American greatness.
Leader Thune, good afternoon.
Yep. Good afternoon.
The House seems intent to push ahead with Reconciliation 3.0. You said last week that you were surprised that they were going to do this. Is this just an academic exercise by the House? But once you get that, if you get that, do you genuinely think that you're going to consider that, and when?
Well, we'll see what they get done this week and what it all consists of. I will say that if they give us a budget resolution as a vehicle, we will hold that, subject to obviously being able to move a continuing resolution to fund the government. It's a possibility, that if necessary, we could pull that budget resolution passed by the House and use it to fund government. I hope that's not necessary. As I said, we've had conversations, productive conversations on both sides of the aisle on a funding resolution that would carry us past the November election.
For clarity, hold it until September when you're right up against that? Or
well, we're going to try and get as I said earlier, we will get a vote on a continuing resolution to fund the government in this work period. And so, until that time, in all likelihood, depending on when that happens, when we can get that to pop, and that depends a little bit on cooperation right now, it's possible that would be something that would get punted into September, yeah.
Given the Democrats' being intent on taking down your agenda, divisions in your own party over things like SAVE and deficit spending, and then the loss of working majorities on at least two committees, including appropriations, with the absence of Senator McConnell and passing of Senator Graham, what is the best that you can hope for, other than just a CO, in getting passed before the November election?
I think that list, as I've said, probably starts with market structure. I think we're nearing. I'm hoping there'll be text available on that yet later today, that we can get that up on the floor. I think the Russia sanctions bill is something, too, that we're sort of homing in on, finalizing final text on that that's available for consideration on the floor. I would say, again, defense authorization, but that's going to be subject to Democrats being willing to let us get on it. But that historically has been a bipartisan thing, and something that all of us, I believe, at least on this side of the aisle, think that's something we ought to be able to get done. And for all the reasons, and you look at the world today, national security ought to be objective and job number one. And for whatever reasons, the Democrats have walked away from that issue. So that's something. And then I would say, there are other things out there, permitting reform, NIL. There are a number of things that, as I said, are candidates for bipartisan legislation. The question is going to be to what level the Democrats want to participate in that. And can we get 60 votes on the floor of the Senate to get some of those things across the finish line? So that's what it's going to come down to.
Initially, the president said that the war would last just a handful of weeks. Now it's been several months, and 3 more service members have died. They're asking for $67 billion in taxpayer money to fund this. Do you think the American public believes that this war is going in the right trajectory? Would you say it is going in the right path?
I think what the president did in response to the Iranians violating the ceasefire was to make it clear that we weren't going to tolerate that. And I think his objective is getting the Strait open. The Iranians are violating international law by blocking the shipping lanes in the Strait of Hormuz. So I think the president has within his authority, obviously based upon not only the law, but also, I think, based upon the way the Iranians have reacted to the ceasefire and an unwillingness to sit down and actually make a deal, I think the president's actions are designed to force them back to the table. And I hope that that's effective and successful. We all do. And in the meantime, I think most of us, at least, believe that we ought to support our men and women in uniform and hope and pray that they're successful.
But, Leader Flynn, do you believe that the administration needs to be more transparent about their plan forward before Congress authorizes additional funding in the hundreds of billions of dollars potentially in a war supplemental?
Well, I think that the supplemental obviously isn't just about Iran. The supplemental is about replacing munitions, and there was a need for that well before Iran. But let's assume your premise. I think that that is the area in which we have some control over issues like this, and the power of the purse, the ability of the Congress to weigh in on matters like this. But the request that they've submitted, I think, is something that most of our colleagues are going to be willing to support. There are some concerns about whether or not it'll be offset, whether or not it'll be paid for. There are concerns, some of our colleagues are going to be about it, is it enough? And, the level that's been requested by the administration. So we will have those discussions if and when we can get a bill like that on the floor. Right now, I don't know when that happens, but I know there's a sincere interest on our side in trying to accommodate the need that our military has to be prepared to face any kind of threat that we face around the world.
leaders, can I ask, while you have Chairman Cotton here for an update on Jay Clayton's nomination, whether you guys anticipate getting him through before the August recess, and FISA as well, the reauthorization with the status.
The committee just voted to move Mr. Clayton's nomination to the Senate, to the full Senate.
What was the vote on that? Was that a party line vote?
9-8.
Leader Thune, Senator Fetterman has indicated that if Democrats officially become anti-Israel, he would leave the party. Have you had any conversations with him about maybe joining the GOP conference, and would you welcome him if he were to offer that?
Yes, we would welcome him.
Have you talked to him about it?
I haven't talked to him recently. I have had conversations with him in the past, as have many of my colleagues, about the challenges he faces in his caucus. And, there are many of us who I think would welcome the opportunity to have him join the Republican conference. But, ultimately that's a decision that's up to him. And as Senator Barrasso pointed out in his remarks, this is a party that's moving further and further, more radically, and to the more extreme left on a lot of issues. And I think people like John Fetterman, who have views that probably reflect a more moderate, or at least historically moderate, Democrat position, are really kind of people without a home. So if he ever comes to the conclusion that he's ready to move, we would certainly welcome it. Thank you.
Minority Leader Chuck Schumer was joined moments later by Democrats Sheldon Whitehouse and Tim Kaine, who focused on war with Iran and alleged corruption out of the White House.
Senator Whitehouse was behind me a minute ago, but we'll soon be joined by Senator Whitehouse. We are already joined by Senator Kaine. Thank you both for coming. Here is Sheldon Whitehouse. Okay, so Trump and Rubio declared this war over in April, in May, in June. They were wrong every time. More than 500 American troops have been injured in just the past few weeks, and nearly 100 of those have been withheld from Americans by the Pentagon. Information about 100 of them have been withheld, which is disgraceful. Almost 20 American soldiers have now paid the ultimate price, and these headlines that we have here reveals the truth. The ceasefire collapsed, the war is escalating, American troops are paying the price. Iran knew it attacked our bases. The Pentagon knew our troops were wounded. The only people kept in the dark were the American people. That's not operational security. It's political protection for Donald Trump. And while our troops are being injured, Pete Hegseth was out marketing testosterone supplements. Nearly 100 wounded troops. But the Secretary of Defense found time for a sales pitch. Hegseth must answer for this today. No military family should learn from a newspaper what its government refused to tell them. Everything this administration is telling Republicans behind closed doors must be shared with the entire Congress. And Senate Democrats will now force another vote this week to end this unauthorized war and bring our troops home. Trump cannot hide the wounded and call it peace. Congress must end this war. On corruption. Trump's corruption is not a side story of this presidency. It's the business model. He's turned the presidency into the most profitable scheme of his life and left American families with the bill. This week I launched a Democratic Senate effort to expose the corruption, show Americans what it costs them, and develop reforms to stop it. Take Trump's Truth API for $100,000 a month. Wall Street can buy early success to the president's market-moving posts, and in a millisecond, traders can make a fortune if they get this information first. If a White House aide sold presidential announcements to traders, it would be an earth-shattering scandal. And now Trump makes it a subscription plan. We said we were talking about corruption. Every day he gives us more proof, such as what he just did with Trump Truth, with his API. Then there's the $400 million luxury jet, the largest gift ever handed to an American president, and add another $1 billion to retrofit it. Trump gets the plane, taxpayers get $1 billion bill. Warren Harding, generally regarded as the most corrupt president in history, was a piker compared to this guy. It is the Trump formula. He gets the gift, his wealthy friends get the advantage, working families pay the bill. Senate Democrats will follow the money, expose the deals, and at the end of this work period, we will introduce major legislation to stop this abuse. The presidency is not a family business, the White House is not for sale, and the American people are not Donald Trump's easy marks. Senator Whitehouse.
Thank you, Chuck. Corruption is notoriously rampant in the Trump administration, and it is not just the sort of corruption that is an offense against political propriety. It's the sort of corruption that lands in family finances, with Americans having to pay higher costs in order to fund Trump's corruption. One obvious example is the crooked scheme to blockade low-cost solar and wind power and keep the low-cost power from coming to the grid. So in order to meet demand, the grid has to climb up the generation stack to more and more expensive power plants. Those power plants then set the price for every electron on the grid. So it is a huge dispersal of money out of regular Americans' pockets in the billions of dollars of added cost. And if you look at where on the generation stack that added money goes, it goes to the fossil fuel plants. It goes to the fossil fuel dealers who fuel those plants. This is a billion-dollar-plus transfer of wealth, a deliberate extraction of wealth from American consumers to send it to Trump's corrupt big fossil fuel donors. It could not be more clear, if you have the slightest understanding of how the grid works, to see this corrupt scheme in action. If you want to look at another one, look at the great climate insurance collapse that is coming, that has already landed in Florida, that has already landed in Texas, that has already landed along the Mississippi coast, that homeowners are experiencing dramatically in their lives right now. And the Trump administration cannot respond to that because it is so corrupted by fossil fuel that it can't admit that the climate risk that's causing the problem even exists. So here are two huge costs, electric bills and homeowners insurance, that are clobbering American families, and the Trump administration simply cannot be trusted on either of those issues because of corruption. And of course, I'll conclude by noting that the root cause of all this corruption is the filthy dark money that has infiltrated our politics, and that every Democrat in the Senate has voted against that dark money every chance we've had, and that every Republican in the Senate has voted to defend that dark money every single time. Thanks very much. Senator Kaine.
Senator Kaine.
Tomorrow at Dover, Delaware, 3 U.S. troops killed in the war in Iran will come home for the dignified remains ceremony. Their family members will be there. There will likely be another coming home soon, bringing to 18 the total of U.S. troops who have been killed in this war since February 28th. Hundreds have been injured. Our hearts go out to them and their families, and it's just hard to imagine what they're feeling. But one thing I know that they're asking, because this is what people ask if their husband or wife is killed in a military action, if their mom or dad is killed, if their brother or sister is killed, if their child is killed, they ask why. Why did this happen? What purpose did it serve? The 14,000 who lost their lives during the global war on terror, the 65,000 who were injured. So many of those families were Virginia. They asked why. 56,000 in Vietnam. Their families asked why. And these 18, one of whom is a Virginian, Robert Marzon, a warrant officer, their families asked why. You better have an answer for that question. You better have a really good answer for that question. And as of right now, this war of choice that Donald Trump started, he cannot answer that question. Congress has definitively declared, both houses, that this war is illegal. Only we in the Constitution have that power. The president is ignoring us, even though that declaration was made by 2 Republican majority houses, and with the restarting of this war and the broadening of the war to include attack on civilian infrastructure in neighboring countries, it is widening. The families who've lost their loved ones aren't the only ones asking why. People are asking why they're paying so much more for gasoline, why farmers are having to pay so much more for fertilizer, why their lives are being made so hard. Why did Donald Trump decide now we need to widen the war? He said, we've been nice so far to Iran, threatening to escalate the war. Tell that to the parents of the children who were killed at the school in the opening days of the war. Right now, the administration is hell-bent on pursuing an illegal and foolish war and cannot answer that question that the families looking them in the eye deserve an answer for. And that's why what the leader said is right. We have got to do all we can to end this foolish, illegal, unnecessary, unproductive war. We've done what we can under the War Powers Resolution. The president is ignoring us. He can ignore the law. He can break the law. He can't change the law. Our option now, we need to move forward, continue to put folks on the record about whether they support this war or not, but our option now is to use the only tool that we have left where we have the leverage, and that's the appropriations process. We shouldn't be shoving massive increases in dollars over to the Pentagon where they're in the middle of a war that is illegal. And I'm going to do all I can to make sure that the most important thing we can do to support our troops is not allow them to be misused in the way that this president is misusing them. Thank you.
Thank you. 2 great senators. Thank you both very much. No, right back there. Go ahead.
Democrats have a rare moment of leverage here. The president wants your votes for his crypto bill. Will Democrats use that leverage to restrain his billion-dollar crypto bill?
Look, the bottom line is that there are people negotiating on the crypto bill. We need a bill with very strong guardrails that protect consumers. Yes.
In May, Democrats had a 7-point advantage on the generic ballot over Republicans. That lead is now shrunk down to 4. Do you think Democratic Socialist candidates are hurting the Democratic Party?
Let me tell you this. We're doing very well. We've recruited great candidates across the country. They're doing extremely well in every way. And we are going to take back the Senate. Yes, back there.
Yes, I wanted to ask about the tariffs that were announced on $20 billion in Canadian exports, plywood, electrical switchgear, things that will make life more expensive here. Does Congress have any avenue to try and stop these tariffs or others?
We have had several votes on these tariffs, and I believe the less recent Canadian tariffs. We need our Republican colleagues to join us. These tariffs hurt the American people. I believe it's estimated that the average American family pays $1,700 more out of their pockets because of them, and they're done in certain tariffs are okay, but they're done in a willy-nilly way without regard to how they affect the American people. Yes, Hill.
In Maine, Troy Jackson has essentially locked up the Democratic nomination to replace Graham Plattner. Does he have your endorsement? Should he count on the party's support?
Bottom line is, my North Star has always been take back the Senate. We're going to beat Susan Collins, and we are going to take back the Senate.
Only the Senate is scheduled to return to Washington next week. A memorial event for late South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham is planned for Tuesday. Unauthorized reproduction, distribution, or use of this episode without expressed written permission from FedNet is prohibited.